It's easy, I think, to love beginnings. It's one of the reasons why our society has so many New Years. We have the big one with the ball dropping on December 31st. We have the unspoken New Year, which probably has more actual beginnings than the first one, when school starts, the congregational year starts. And we have cultural and religious New Years, the Chinese New Year, the Celtic New Year in October, and the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, which we begin tonight. At Fourth Universalist, we're fortunate to celebrate Rosh Hashanah through our relationship with West End Synagogue, who shares this sanctuary and this space with us, as you can tell from this stage that makes me so far away from all of you that it feels strange, at least for me. I recently learned that Rosh Hashanah is also called Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembrance. This is not to be confused with the Israeli holiday in the spring of the same name. The term Yom HaZikaron originates centuries ago, millennia ago, from a Jewish prayer book that's thought to date back to the Babylonian exile. The ancient sages of Israel, when they coined that term, knew something that I think is easy to forget, that when we celebrate new beginnings, we would be wise to think about the past that we are leaving as well, to remember also what is ending. The ancient Romans knew this too. They had many gods, the ancient Romans, in their pantheon, most adapted from the Greeks or other groups that they conquered. But one of the few unique Roman deities was a god named Janus. I first encountered Janus when I was in training to be what they call an interim minister. It's a temporary minister that begins after a long-time minister leaves and before the congregation gets the new long-term minister. You're kind of an in-between transition person. This happened here after our last settled minister, Rosemary, left Fourth Universalist. Susan came in for 2 years, and then I arrived. Susan's job was to help reflect on where we've been, where we were, and where we wanted to go. Janus, the god, ancient Roman god, is kind of a symbol for interim ministers. Every interim minister gets a book called the Janus Workbook. It's almost like their mascot. That's because for Romans, Janus was the god of beginnings, change, and transitions. His image was unique. Janus is always shown with having not one, but two faces. One looking this way and the other looking this way. One looking into the past, the other into the future. Forward and back. The God of beginnings knew that you needed to remember where you'd been in order to move ahead. New Year's and remembrance together. I usually love transitions myself and new beginnings. When something new awaits in the future, I love that it forces me to embrace my inner Janus. Being an interim was great when I did it for a year, because I got to sit in what I experienced was a marvelous in-between time. But that experience happens in everyday life too. Everything seems to slow because it feels like something big is happening. Some change is afoot. I carry with me vivid memories of one such transition moment. I was in the process of transitioning from living in Chicago, where I had been working at a church there, working with children, and moving to divinity school in Boston. And the memories are simple, but I have this vivid memory seared in my head of the moving process. I remember packing up my old apartment, listening to music as I worked. I remember sitting on my hardwood floors in the newly empty room, of the breeze flowing in from the open windows because it was hot that day in June, and the smell of the fresh air and seeing the light come in through the windows because the shades had been packed away. It was a spiritual moment for me, a moment of clarity and wonder at that change. I was experiencing in real time one chapter ending and another beginning. I felt both excitement and anticipation, but also a kind of happy sadness, too. A wistfulness around the good I had experienced in that place, all the memories, all the friends, all the unrealized plans that would never come, that I was leaving. It was knowing that a time of my life was coming to an end, permanently, and that I wasn't really fully aware of what all that meant. It escaped my ability to comprehend what that change meant for me in that moment. And it was also gratitude that what I was leaving felt good, that I had loved the life I had had there. I have found that in moments like this, I sink into those experiences of remembrance, into my Janice self, not to escape or to deny the future, but to soak in where I've been, to try to process it, understand it, work through the lessons and the feelings that I have from closing that chapter before I might lose it to memory. I have found that these Janice moments, though, are easier when times are good. When what you're leaving is bad, it's much harder to want to look back at the past, to remember. Probably the most miserable year of my life was when I moved down to Florida for a year and knew no one, had a job that was unstable and was full of conflict and was far away from anything or anyone that I knew. I was not a happy camper that year. And as the year went on, I started to fantasize about leaving. I did this a lot while I was driving to work. In South Florida, you drive everywhere and get stuck in traffic a lot. There was always this one stoplight, too, that I would get stopped on the way to work. The light would last forever, and sometimes it would go through 2 iterations of green and red before I got my way through, sometimes even 3. So I spent a lot of time at that stoplight. And it became a special place for me in one way, because it represented a crossroads of sorts. When I turned left, as I often did, and went south, I would get to the church office, which was located in a subdivision above a Boston market. We didn't have our own church building. Turning left meant going back to more of the same, the stress, the isolation, the boredom. I would feel the anxiety growing in me as I got closer to that office, a reminder of the place I couldn't escape. But sitting at that stoplight, waiting for the light to change, hoping I would get through, I would also think about turning right. If I went right, if I turned north, I would go away from that office, away from that place of work, from my apartment, from the life I was living. I would think about turning right a lot. I thought about how what I loved most in this world was to the right. The people, the places. That turning right would mean being free from stress, from the isolation, the culture shock. I thought about how one day I would just decide to go right and keep on going, and how happy that would make me feel, no matter what anyone to the left might think. I would drive until I reached Orlando, and then Georgia, and just keep on going till I got wherever home felt. A few times I would turn right just to see how it would feel. The taste, the ending, and the new beginning. I would drive for a little ways before I knew I had to turn back. It was a false hope, of course, that I could just go away and keep going. But it was one that I could return to again and again when I was feeling low. A little taste of freedom, of something new. The hope of a road leading away into another, different, better life. Eventually, I got to take that right turn. My job was mercifully cut as the Great Recession destroyed the congregation's pledges. and I moved to that delightful Chicago apartment that I would later leave. I'm sure that a number of us have had a similar experience of being in a place, a time in our lives where it wasn't what we wanted it to be. When we were unhappy, and a new beginning meant a chance to feel good. Not guaranteed, but just a hope to be free and start over. Sometimes that longing is paired with an escape plan, a turning right that keeps us going, that we can think about. Maybe here in New York, that's hopping on a plane and leaving the city behind. Maybe that's relocating to a farm in Woofing, upstate, where you don't have to worry about smog and traffic and subways and whatever else is stressing you out. Maybe that's picking up the phone to your long-distance partner and telling them that you're ready to move to them and build a life. Whatever it is, when our present reality does not give us life, we look to new beginnings and hope that they can help. It's still hard to understand how remembrance fits in to times like these. We don't want to look back at these unpleasant things, particularly when we're in the moment of leaving them behind. Looking ahead feels so much better. It's an aversion to returning to where we've been, a desire to make a clean break. I know that I've feared revisiting a past, and by revisiting it, bringing it to life again in a way that I can't escape in the present. These fears are grounded in the worry that the scars we received in the past will define us in the future. And we all have those scars. And these scars, by definition, they're a real fear because that's what they are. They are, by definition, with us forever, the scars. But I think we have to reframe what the past means. I don't think the ancient Jewish prayers of Yom HaZikaron, nor the Roman followers of Janus would have suggested that we let our past suffering define us. That's not the point of remembering the past. To be continuing to return to these things that cause us suffering and pain. I think they would have argued that it is not the scars of our past that should define us, but the healing that we have taken to overcome them. The recovery, the confrontation, the facing of those things that we have left behind. After all, the scars that we have are no longer the wounds themselves, but the tissues that our body has used for healing. They are reassurances of our lives, of hope and our resiliency. We were not taken down by those scars. I have found that when looking back at the pain in my life of those dark moments, whether in Florida or other times, it helps not to focus so much on the pain, but on my response to it, which isn't always perfect. And there's always fits and starts, movements backwards and forwards. But when I look at it and I know that I've overcome it, it leads me to a greater sense of understanding and peace and resiliency. I spent a year fantasizing about driving away. But despite my unhappiness that year, it was probably my biggest year of personal growth. I learned what unhappiness was. I learned that I need to make choices in my life as a new adult that led me from loneliness and towards joy. That I couldn't sacrifice that and just expect it all to work out. I learned the dangers of getting stuck, that if I didn't act, my life could just go on like that forever. But I also learned that I could be resilient. I learned that all things come to an end if we try, even bad things. I'm reminded also of my brother, who after multiple years of working in schools and several more years in graduate school to get certified to teach, realized that he just didn't like it. It sucked his soul. He went to work every day feeling like he was depressed, that this was a thing that he dreaded. Even though he put years into it and tons of money, He was suffering. And so looking back at that present and that past, he made the decision to leave and begin a new chapter, an uncertain one, a scary one, without job security or prospects. He told me this summer that he would make that choice again, no matter what happened. It is better to risk, he said, the chance to be happy than to embrace a life of uncertain or a certain unhappiness. That, for him, makes all the difference. If we look at it this way, the past can be a powerful teacher. Our suffering can teach us who we are, not because of the pain, but because of the response that we have shows us our character. It shows us possibility and hope. It displays our courage, especially in these crossroad moments. We must choose our path, one or the other, left or right, north or south, to set out anew or stay the course. There can be no bigger moments than sitting at a crossroads between the past and the future. And this is why I think that New Year's are so important. Why I love them, not just because they can be celebratory happy times, but because they give us a chance, an excuse even, to place ourselves at that crossroads. The chance to either turn right or turn left, towards the future we've always hoped for, rather than the past that disappoints us. Every New Year's, whether that's the start of school, whether that's December 31st or Rosh Hashanah, it's an invitation to jar ourselves out of our complacency, that our lives are just good enough, that things can't get better, that this is the life that we've been dealt, and we have to just endure. We don't have to settle for that. So on this New Year's Day, as people of Jewish faith gather to celebrate tonight the start of Rosh Hashanah, ask yourself what your past and your present is telling you. Is it urging you to listen, to pay attention to something? Maybe something that you haven't been wanting to listen to, or something that's just below the surface of your consciousness, that things aren't exactly what you want them to be. If that's there, is it suggesting that maybe there's a risk that you can take, that you can turn right instead of left, that there's a change that a future can hold? Maybe that's a warning to act before it's too late. Maybe it's a loving reminder that you have made tough choices before, that you have left something before, and that the future wasn't so bad, and that you can do that again. This is the great promise of the new year, to build on the wisdom of the past, to give us the joy of the future. We can look back, we can look forward, we can appreciate where we've been, we can cherish it or simply learn from it, the bumps and the bruises. But no matter what we are facing today, no matter what past we have had that has shaped us or hurt us, we can always make the decision today to start again. Or if not today, the next New Year's not too far away. We are never trapped in our past. That is a wonderful, beautiful thing. May your new year today or any day be good and bright, and may it give you the future you deserve. May it be so, and amen.